Okay, class, let's settle down. Settle down, take your seats. We've got a lot to cover today, and a special guest with a special discussion topic. Also on videotape, we're going to be having an interview with someone you've probably heard of, a guy by the name of Fran Tarkenton.
No, sorry, the subject is not football. Something a lot more serious. Serious enough to be affecting adversely the lives of some 20 million Americans, damaging those lives, destroying, even killing. The subject is entering into school discussion periods. And it should. If those millions affected, of them many are high school age, college, even the lower grades. It's a chemical, quite common, widely accepted as a part of our lives, and yet so misunderstood, so often overlooked as a destroyer of happiness for perhaps 1 out of 9 who come in contact with it.
And to the extent.
Hey, pot. How about pot?
Yeah, certainly. Sure. Okay.
Alcohol. So common, so accepted, so dangerous to so many. Alcohol. For most of us, it's part of our social lives, but for many, men, women, old and the young, it's a disease called alcoholism.
Okay, can anybody give me a definition of the word alcoholism?
Well, alcoholism is drinking too much, really boozing it up.
Hey, it's when an old man drinks so much he doesn't want to do anything else.
A wino.
A booze freak.
No, it's a disease.
A disease? You're nuts. You can't catch alcoholism like a cold. Anybody who gets off on booze is because they really like it.
No, that's not right. Bet you'll find out that alcoholism is classified as a disease. And it's a drug, too.
And it's also a chemical. And some people are like, well, allergic to it. They can't take it. It becomes a drug to them, and they become addicted and can't stop.
I don't think so. I saw a movie once, and it's all in their minds. They just want to escape from reality, from life. They don't want to accept responsibility or a job. They'd rather booze it up and work and earn a living.
Do any of you know an alcoholic?
Sure. I see him downtown.
No, I asked, do you personally know anyone who drinks too much, who is really an alcoholic?
Hey, I know a guy who really sloshes it up. Well, he's an uncle of mine, and at every family get-together, he gets smashed out of his gourd.
Yeah. Yeah, I know one, too. Guy used to work for my dad, till he got fired. He was a real sharp salesman, too, till he drank too much on his lunch break and slashed up the company cars.
What happened?
Well, he was going down the acceleration lane, and about 90, and he rolled over 6 times on the interstate. Really creepy.
Okay, hold it down now. Well, you got some right ideas and you got some wrong ones. Let's get it straight. Let's get the facts. Gang, this is Mr. Glenn Jorgensen, Executive Director of River Park in Pierre, South Dakota. River Park is an alcoholic treatment center, and Glenn is a recognized expert on alcoholism and its treatment. Glenn, who's right and who's wrong?
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here to discuss it with the class. The young lady that classified it as a disease is definitely right. That's what alcoholism is. The students that talked about it being a chemical, a drug, that's true too. Those that have the idea that it's sort of a matter of choice or a matter of willpower, you're wrong. You see, alcoholism is a disease when it affects a person's life in any area, be it physical, spiritual, emotionally, in his family life, in his business life, in his finances. The definition of alcoholism is if an individual has trouble in any of those areas and alcohol is involved. It's not really a question of how much you drink or how often you drink or what you drink. Really, the question is, what does it do to your life when you do drink? A lot of people drink, and some of them never seem to have any problem, but for others, they're allergic to it, or it has an effect on their lives, maybe because of their attitudes towards drinking, the home life that they grow up in. But again, if you just remember this, you see, it's just not normal to have trouble in your life if there's something you can do about it. So alcoholism is trouble with alcohol involved. I think it's a big problem amongst the young people. I don't know, I presume you would agree. I think it's 7 times the problem that the other drug addiction is. You know, alcohol is a drug that's very easy to get a hold of. It's either in your homes or at your neighbors, your friends. You can buy it quite easily, whether you're of age or not. A very serious mistake that people make is to think that in order to be an alcoholic, you've got to be a 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old person. Really, I've had the experience of working with a number of, well, as young as 8, 9, 10-year-olds. We've had people in treatment, several who were 14, 15, and many young teenagers, probably several hundred in their early 20s. So obviously it's no respecter of person. I think it's important that people come to understand that this is something that can happen to anyone. Fortunately, I think that society is beginning to face up to this rather large problem. I think that's evidenced by being here this morning with you. It's something we can begin to talk about, we can start to understand and try to learn more about. Recently, I had the privilege of being at Metropolitan Stadium in Minneapolis, where I interviewed Fran Tarkenton, the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. He was amongst... this was a gathering of some 30,000 people, people who were celebrating freedom from alcoholism or drug addiction, or families of alcoholics, or those that were just concerned with it. And Fran and I had a good visit. I brought the tape along. I think you'll enjoy listening to the interview. He has some great philosophy. He's a real good guy, and perhaps he'll have a few things to say that'll help you as you build your lives. So we'll give it a run. Fran, before we get into this, I'd just like to take a minute to thank you for taking the time to come by here and help us in our efforts to present to the general public a little better understanding, hopefully to bring about more acceptance and a change in attitude about alcoholism and drug addiction. Because we really believe that probably the biggest need we have in this whole field is to create an atmosphere where people who have this illness can say, hey, I need help. So we thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm just very happy to be a part of this, and I think it's a great day we're having here, and I'm glad to be here with you on this program.
Fran, I realize that I understand that you yourself have not had a problem in this particular area. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Okay, so you're one of these beautiful people who has concern about the person who is afflicted and has given enough of their life to take the time and energy to help. How come?
Well, I guess all of our lives have been touched by it through family or friends or what have you, and mine has through both family and friends, and I think there's a great misunderstanding generally about chemical dependency, and I've become more aware in the last couple of years of what's involved, and sometimes when we have major problems, we want to turn away from them and not look at them and not face them. We think they'll go away. And this certainly is an area of great concern for our country and for our people, and one that we cannot afford to turn away from, but look at it full face, meet the challenge, and conquer it. And so many of my friends have been able to look at it that way and conquer it and move on in life. And I think that's what's important, and that's what I'm about, and that's what I'm concerned with, and I think it's a major concern for all of us.
It's been often said that this is an illness, and speaking really only about alcoholism, saying nothing about the other drug dependencies, that there are some 9 million in the country. I think that's conservative. I think it's closer to 20 million. Each of those then affecting another 4 people.
Sure.
So we're talking about an illness in just the alcoholism part that afflicts or affects some 80 million people. And as you say, it's time we get our heads out of the sand and address this problem. And
it's kind of staggering, isn't it? And I don't think that we have a full appreciation of it because of what society has told us about alcohol and about the so-called beauty of it and what have you, and the attractiveness of it. And I don't think they have told us the full story. But so many of us have, in one way or another, been touched by it and seen what it can inflict. And I think that the more awareness we can get, the better understanding that we can have, the better we're able to cope with the problem. And through things like this, through your television show, through Freedom Fest here at Metropolitan Stadium, I think we're able to maybe get the story across now to the people.
It's a beautiful thing that's happening here, that where 25, 30, 40 years ago, the plight of one that was afflicted with this illness, there was no hope.
Yeah.
And to look out today and see the thousands of people who are celebrating freedom, it's encouraging, and it certainly should tell the general public and those families where alcoholism or drug addiction is, that there is something that can be done about it. One of our concerns, Fran, is in the area of the youth. We recognize that all addiction is very difficult, but that alcoholism is so much bigger a problem than the other, quote, drugs. Is this, would you agree with that? Are you seeing
well,
this?
From the data that I've seen lately, it certainly looks to be that kind of trend. You know, the last few years we were so involved and concerned about drugs, and alcohol became a lesser concern possibly, especially with young people. But now I think it's the data that certainly said that is not that's not the case. That alcohol maybe is a more severe problem. You know, in the whole area, you know, I'm around a lot of people that are successful, whatever success might be.
Right.
Athletics, business, life, or what have you, and I think sometimes we get a misconception of what, how they got there. You know, all the people I know have stumbled and have fallen down, have lost, but somehow they've gotten back up and they kept on going. And I think that's the story we're saying here. You know, some of us get knocked down, some of us have failure, some of us stumble, but we can get back up. And we can get back up easier if somebody's there to care and to have a hand to help us back up. And I think that's what life is all about, to have a care for one another, to be concerned, and to share with one another our concerns and our love, and to keep the struggle going.
Fran, that's beautiful. It reminds me of the eulogy at the funeral of Knut Rockne, where the fellow said, in this day of mediocrity, when the sign of success is the go-getter, he was a go-giver. And this is kind of what I think the world needs more of.
Well, you know, in the cynicism of the world, we just had an open golf tournament down in Atlanta. We were a lot of nostalgia, and we were recognizing the greatness of Bobby Jones, who was an Atlanta native. And so many times we look at the heroes, and especially the heroes that have died. We say, we think they made every putt. We think they won every tournament. We think they completed every pass. And they didn't. They struggled. And Bobby Jones lost playoffs for Open championships. Bobby Jones played in 13 Masters and didn't finish above 12th. And but the man was a man. He wasn't perfect, but he coped with his failures and his weaknesses and his stomach, and he kept going. And I think sometimes we think, well, you know, isn't that guy lucky, or isn't that gal lucky because she's got this, and she's got this success? But they're human, and they've had to live with the same problems that all of us have, but they've somehow kept going.
Usually out of their troubles, they gain new strength, and usually it can be turned into a positive thing rather than a negative thing.
Well, I think the thing we have to recognize, we're never going to get perfection.
Yeah.
We got to, you know, strive for improvement and strive to, but the thing we got to do is meet them as they come. Chemical dependency, whatever it might be, as serious as it may be, we've got to be able to look at it and face it full value, and then deal with it, and be willing to do that, unashamedly.
What about the family thing, Fran? You're, because of your background, your experience, obviously you're concerned and doing what you can there. Do you think that families are getting to the point where they maybe a little earlier will help the loved one who has this problem, say, hey, you got a problem? You know, for a while they didn't want to do that because of the stigma or not knowing it.
Well, you know, very, very often in life we don't want to have a confrontation. You know, we don't like hassles, we don't like harassment, so we see somebody that's in trouble, and rather than to confront them and know there's going to be a hassle, we say, you know, let's go on and not try to shake the boat. And finally, if we don't confront it, you know, the boat gets rocking so much that it's harder to deal with. And I think that's something we have to do. We have to have more an awareness, and people be more assertive when they see a problem within their family, to be able to assert themselves and do something, take some action.
It's so true. Visiting with Dick Van Dyke, I think earlier today, we were talking about the fact that people, they don't comprehend the seriousness of this affliction. This thing kills people.
Sure it does.
Within the last 2 weeks, have gone to 2 funerals of good friends who I guess maybe I knew they had the problem of alcoholism. And rather than really pin them down and say, you got to get help, what you're talking about, you kind of hesitate to bring it to a head. And people go on and die.
Sure.
Because we're afraid that they might not like hearing it. But good grief, they've got to. And what we hope out of these programs is being able to bring across that, number one, the fact that you've got the affliction is not something to be ashamed of. That people have problems, as you said. The thing to be ashamed of is if you don't come out and get some help.
Exactly
Number
right.
two, the treatment and help is available. And I guess we hope that people will understand through your being here, Fran, that you can talk about this thing. Let's get it out of the backyard or out of the closet. And what do you recommend to the viewers that will be watching this, particularly perhaps the family members? Anything you'd just sort of like to throw at them?
Oh, I think that all of us need to learn more about chemical dependency. We need to learn more about the whys and wherefores and then what we can do about it if it affects us or our family. And I think that education and so many things is the key. And I think here it's certainly a key, education and assertiveness, to be able to do something once we see the problem. And that might be even more of a key than the education, is the willingness to do something.
And to recognize that where before, perhaps, particularly in alcoholism, where the idea was that you had to wait for that man to hit bottom.
Yeah.
That, no longer, I can't agree with that. At least you can perhaps bring that bottom up, because the earlier we know, the earlier that a person receives the help, the better chance of recovery. And
No question.
so I guess as families, and of course the family part of it, the illness that they're going through too. And I do think that the family goes along with the one who's afflicted.
There's no question that all of us that are associated with people that are involved with the problem are guilty to some extent as they are, because people do what they get reinforced for doing. And they get reinforced through other people. And if they get acceptance from their family members and their loved ones and friends, and reinforcement from them, it continues on. Behavior is a very simple thing. And sometimes we create the mood and the reinforcement and don't realize we're creating it and doing it, but we do so often.
That's a good point. We tolerate intolerable conduct, and almost just as we laugh at the drunk. Laughter is kind of says, I approve. And there's nothing funny.
It's the life of the party.
Yeah, and of course the whole thrust that you've got to have some kind of a chemical or a crutch. If you don't feel good, something to make you feel better. We don't feel good all the time. I imagine you find yourself coming out of ball games sometimes that maybe you don't feel all that good.
Well, you also got the situation that we have in athletics where people think they can take some uppers or whatever to increase their performance. And they create illusions of increasing their performance. But in reality, they don't run any faster, they don't throw any farther, and they don't tackle any harder. But in their illusions, they do. And it's a crutch for them, and something that is very dangerous and not going to help them. Their performance is going to hurt them in the long run.
And the reaction has to come. People could be star football players and could become alcoholic or drug.
Oh, well, it happens. Football mirrors society. It happens in football. It happens in politics. It happens in business. It happens in any walk of life. We're all vulnerable to it, and it doesn't. And disease hits every walk of life, and we have it certainly in football.
Fran, again, I know that what you've done here today is going to affect a lot of people and is going to bring help and some hope to them so that they realize that it's okay. It's okay to face up to this thing.
Well, I think the thrilling thing of here is that people that do care and the people get together. And I'm a great believer. I have a need for people. I have a need to be with people. I have a need to share. I have a need to love. I have a need to receive love. I have a need to give strength and receive strength from people. And I don't want to live on an island by myself. And I die quickly. And I think what this is all about is that here are people with a common concern and a common care who've come together to share their life and share their experiences and hope that maybe through that sharing that somebody else can be helped and maybe themselves be helped while doing it. And I think that's the beauty of why we're all here and the excitement of it. We're living.
Yeah, we're alive.
That's where it is.
Fran, thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice being with you.
Mr. Jorgensen, could you explain to us the relationship between alcohol and drugs?
Both are chemical. Alcohol is always a downer. Many people think it's an upper, but it isn't. They're all very addictive. Unfortunately, some of them are socially acceptable, but they are addictive.
Well, hey, what do you do when you're with a gang and, well, there's some beer and even if you can't help it, you get pushed into it?
Yeah, that's true.
I think the best answer to the everybody does it is that I'm not everybody. I think we have to reach that time when we stand up and say to the world, hey, you can't do this to me. I'm an individual. I have dreams. I have a life to build and the things that I want to do. And you cannot force me to throw that away by doing what you think I should do.
What's your treatment? I bet you got straitjackets or bars on the window, huh?
Something like that.
No, really, actually, you're all a little wrong. You remember what Fran said about giving strength and receiving strength, needing to love and to give love, to help each other. This is what River Park is about. It's a place where people together help each other, give each other strength, love, and encourage them to find a new way of life. I brought along some slides that you might find interesting that will show what River Park is all about. So if someone would get the lights, I'll show those to you now.
There's a long and winding river, a quiet, tree-shaded parkland. There's a place called River Park, a place for people, special people. People with a disease, people who wish to again become well. The disease is alcoholism, and River Park is dedicated to helping alcoholics become well. Help them understand why they have become alcoholics and understand what alcohol does to them. River Park helps them take that first step of complete surrender that leads to victory. To say, I am an alcoholic. I can't drink. I need help. River Park is a building attached to St. Mary's Hospital in Pierre, South Dakota. Its rooms are comfortable, homelike. They're not to be looked at, admired, but to be used. They're designed for those who can use them. There are all the necessary facilities, the rooms that serve and the people who run them. But rooms are only rooms, enclosed space. Space to be filled with people. And these people have a need to be loved and to share that love, to share trouble and to share strengths, to talk and to listen, to give and to receive. And this talk and love and strength and sharing, this giving and receiving, is all there just to help the alcoholic understand, know, and believe in the one person who can resolve the disease of alcoholism. And who is that person? The victim, the man who is hurting, the woman who suffers, the alcoholic. And with this giving and receiving, this love and strength and knowledge and understanding, comes friendship. And with that friendship, at long last, comes the brighter times. The outdoor fun and activity, sports, companionship, the hours-long games of cards, the skill of a pool game, the strategy of chess or checkers. Maybe an hour or two of TV, and not alone. And then the realization that I am not alone. I am an alcoholic, but there are those who can help and want to help. Maybe even those I can help. Help. Sometimes it comes in a quiet way, a serene way, a beautiful way. And sometimes help wears a boisterous label. It's there in a loud and joyful and active way. I am not alone. There are those that suffer with me and those that really care. And they are so often the same people. And that's why River Park doesn't need bars in the windows or locks on the doors. I am an alcoholic. I need River Park. I don't want out. I want in, and they want me. Alcoholism. There is no cure, but there is a successful treatment. It's at River Park in Pierce, South Dakota. There's a long and winding river, a quiet, tree-shaded parkland. And there's River Park with love and strength and understanding. And there's River Park with hope for the alcoholic.
Mr. Jorgensen, can you become an alcoholic on beer?
Beer, wine, whiskey, vodka, it really doesn't make any difference. They're all the same. And if a man or woman, young or old, has a tendency towards alcoholism, they simply can't drink.
I thought that alcoholics, were strictly the down and outs. But I guess, like Fran said, it affects all walks of life.
If it's a disease, it can affect anyone, just like any sickness.
Say that I know someone in my family who drinks too much. How can I tell that they're alcoholic and, well, who'd listen to me?
Yeah.
I agree. You can't just walk up to somebody and say, hey, Cold, you've got a problem. If you know of someone that has, or if you're worried about someone in the family, there are ways of trying to help that individual by uniting with the family. You've first of all got to become aware of the problem and what you can do about it by checking with resources. There are things that are available now for families of alcoholics, such as Al-Anon, which is the same for families as AA for the alcoholic, Alateen for young people. But getting together and understanding what the individual is going through and what resources there are to help him, then perhaps you will be able to help that individual to recognize the problem and be willing to do something about it. There are other resources available. There's physicians, friends, doctors, referral mechanisms, members of Alcoholics Anonymous, Alateen. Fran spoke to this during that interview, and let me show you what he had to say about it.
If you are someone there who has a problem with chemical dependency, seek help. If you know someone in your family or a loved one that needs help, be assertive enough to be willing to talk to them, confront them, and find them help. It's their only hope, and yours too.
Fran says, seek help. We at River Park have prepared some information on alcoholism. It's free to anyone who will ask. It tells about alcoholism, how to determine if there is a problem, and what can be done. All you or anyone else has to do is write to me, call me, somehow get in touch, and I'll do my best to help.
Can you ever be cured, totally cured from alcoholism?
No, it's not a matter of being cured. You can recover from it.
Alcoholism. Perhaps you've wondered, am I an alcoholic? Is a member of my family, parent, brother, sister an alcoholic? Remember that simple definition of alcoholism. If there's trouble due to drinking, chances are it's alcoholism. Trouble at home, at work, trouble with family, friends, loved ones, trouble with finances, even trouble with the law. Chances are it's alcoholism. Alcoholism is a disease that can be treated, not cured. There is no cure, but treated successfully at River Park in Pierce, South Dakota. But before any treatment can be undertaken, the victim, the alcoholic, has to want to get well.
Well, of course, I have home life.
What can we do to help? As Fran Tarkenton said, we don't like confrontations, we don't like hassles, harassments, rocking the boat. But when the boat gets rocking so hard, what can we do? Oh, we can find out about alcoholism. We can search out sources to help. Then we can be assertive. We can take some action, be willing to talk and help find help. This man, Glenn Jorgensen of River Park, can help. Call him, write to him, seek help. River Park does help the alcoholic with knowledge, love, and strength. If you, a friend or relative, would like information on the disease called alcoholism, simply call or write Glenn Jorgensen, River Park, Pierce, South Dakota. The disease called alcoholism. Isn't it time to learn? Time to be concerned? Time to seek help?
Mr. Jorgensen, may I talk to you?
Sure, Mary.
I have this older brother, and he can't even hold a job down. All he does is drink beer all day. He gets real mean at my folks. What can I do?
About my Uncle Ralph, he's really a great guy, you know, but gee, what can I do?
Well, I think the fact that you're